In July 1936, Helen Clevenger, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed 19-year-old from Staten Island, had just finished her first year at NYU. She decided to spend the summer with her uncle, William Clevenger, an agricultural professor at NC State, who inspected dairies around North Carolina. When the pair reached the mountains, Helen was really excited to stay at Asheville's fancy Battery Park Hotel. Her uncle had booked her a small single room on the hotel's second floor. And it was in this room that around 1 a.m. on Thursday, July 16, 1936, someone shot Helen in the chest, beat her in the face as she screamed for help. Several guests heard a woman scream, but only one of them investigated the disturbance. Edwin Pittman, whose room was across the hall from Helen's, opened his door and saw a shadowy figure standing in the door to Helen's room. When Edmund wondered aloud what that noise had been, a male voice replied, "That's what I was wondering too." Pittman returned to his room. Minutes later, several employees saw a man run across the lobby into the hotel manager's office and out to the front porch where he vaulted over a handrail. A taxi driver watched him hit the pavement and run out into the night. All of them described the man as around 5'9", stocky, and white. When William went to wake up his niece the following morning, he opened the door and found Helen's lifeless and bloodied body. In a panic, he alerted staff immediately, but the hotel manager did not notify law enforcement for nearly an hour and a half. When the sheriff's office did arrive, they found bullet and casings, but no gun or other weapons. The sheriff was up for re-election, and he needed to quickly find a killer. A tip came in that a local violinist, Mark Volner, had been overheard the night of the murder saying that he had a date with a girl at the Battery Park Hotel. He and his girlfriend, who was his alibi, were taken to the jail and held without charge. Daniel Gaddy, the night watchman, was supposed to punch a clock on every floor, every hour on the hour. There was one missing punch for the entire week between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. the night of the murder on Helen's floor. When Daniel couldn't say why he failed to punch the clock, he was held in jail without charge. Sheriff Brown had one more suspect in mind, Helen's uncle. Brown allowed William to leave Asheville to go to Helen's funeral with the promise that he would return right after. But when William headed up to Staten Island rather than back to Asheville, a furious Sheriff Brown had William tracked down and brought to the jail. With 3 men in jail and no charges filed, Sheriff Brown was getting really desperate at this point. The media was swarming his office 24/7, the news coverage was international, and he was being thought of as a country bumpkin. He began secretly investigating the hotel manager's son, whose name was Eugene Branch, and asking about his alibi and if he had a reputation for whiskey and women. Then, according to several sensational magazine articles, the sheriff re-interviewed Edwin Pittman, who had spoken to the man in Helen's doorway. Now Pittman recalled the man saying something slightly different. "It's what I's wonderin' too." So the sheriff exclaimed, "Those were the words of a black man," and they eliminated all the white suspects. The detectives interviewed all the black employees, and after hours of interrogation, one of them pointed the finger at hall boy 22-year-old Martin Moore. Deputies burst into his mother's house, pulled him out of bed, and demanded to know where the gun was. In shock, he told them it was under the house. At the courthouse, detectives told Martin that they had found his fingerprints in Helen's room. They had not. Martin admitted the gun was his, but said he had lent the gun to another employee the night of the murder. He was questioned all night without a lawyer, and in the early hours of the morning, he confessed to the murder. He was then forced to reenact the murder. During the reenactment, if something that he said didn't quite fit with the evidence, they told him to try again. In this photograph, he stands in the doorway to Helen's room, facing Edwin Pittman's room. But no one questioned why Edwin would not have originally mentioned that he had seen a black man inside a room in the segregated hotel in the middle of the night. As Martin made his way out of the hotel during the reenactment, he took a very different route than the man who had been seen fleeing the hotel on July 16th, so it's shown here by the red circles in the image. He took the detectives through the ballroom, which was half a floor above the lobby, climbed down the far side of the building as reporters watched outside. A week later, he was on trial for murder. He was lanky and at least half a foot taller than the man seen fleeing the hotel. Several witnesses testified that he had been at his girlfriend's birthday party that night, and Martin recounted being beaten with a rubber hose until he confessed. Still, an all-white jury deliberated for less than 1 hour before convicting him to death. Martin's lawyer appealed the verdict but didn't file the paperwork correctly, so the appeal was denied. The NAACP petitioned the governor to delay the execution to give them time to investigate a new suspect, but the governor declined. Martin continued to proclaim his innocence and then again confess in desperate attempts to avoid execution. His execution date was set for less than 5 months after Helen's murder. On December 11th, 1936, a reporter listened through a stethoscope as Martin's heart stopped beating in the gas chamber. Because Martin's family could not afford to claim his body, it was given to Wake Forest Medical School for students to carve on. The day after Martin's death, the Associated Negro Press reported that the maid of a white man in Asheville had overheard a conversation indicating that the murder had been committed by an unnamed prominent Asheville white man's degenerate son who had fled town and perhaps even borrowed Martin's gun. The Battery Park's bell captain, Booker T. Sherrill, recalled in a 1995 interview that many in Asheville's black community thought the murder had been committed by the hotel manager's son. But at that time, they couldn't afford to express their thoughts in a situation like that. After Martin's execution, the physical evidence was disposed of and the case officially closed. I'm sorry to say my book does not offer a definitive answer as to who killed Helen Clevenger, but I hope that it does convince you that 2 innocent young people lost their lives because of the events that took place in the early morning hours of July 16th, 1936 at the Battery Park.